All right, we are live on YouTube. Welcome everyone. It's Monday evening. We are working with chapter 6 of Practical Work on Self. David is tagged as the teacher today by Bernie. Okay, Michelle, thank you.
Struggle of the Sorcerers is the name of the chapter. And the chapter abstract says, ordinarily, the war of the forces of darkness or of light just happens mechanically. Within the machine, it's uncontrolled and wasted. We must find a way to organize it and make it profitable to our work. So, what do you think about that? I mean, we've read the chapter together. You may have read it, looked at it a little bit on your own. What does that even mean to anybody? The war of the forces of darkness and light just happened mechanically. What does that, what does
You know,
that do
we
when you read it?
we always have this ideas of good and bad that we see in movies or in stories, and this uh we always hear about the light and darkness uh in different cultures around the world. And
Hmm.
it always seemed like the war was always within, not to anyone in the outside world, but it seemed like it always seemed to direct inward.
That it has to do with a war of darkness and light within us.
Hmm.
Okay. And most of the time it happens mechanically. We're basically not aware of it. We must find a way to organize it and make it profitable. What in the world could that possibly mean?
Use it for the work to bring the presence,
To bring the what?
to bring the presence,
The
the
presence.
invocation of the presence, the prayer which says that I wish to use this to invoke the presence of my presence in the present moment.
Okay. But it says we must find a way and make it profitable to my work. What does that mean to you, Nishan? It. What is it?
Forces,
The
the forces of,
forces. Mhm.
I mean, any force. I don't know what light means here. If it says mechanically, then it will all be darkness. Even if you are happy or sad, doesn't matter. It's all a negative emotion.
Okay.
Um, but if we can use that to bring the presence in that energy, that will make it profitable to our work. The
So,
more the I think it's also the duration. The longer you can hold on to the presence,
okay.
the holding on.
I think, David, in this context, when it says we must find a way to organize it, I think it is referring to the war that he talked about in the previous sentence between
Mm.
the forces of darkness. So we must find a way to organize the war that happens and use that for our work.
So, what would be an example of the war? What kind of war?
The constant struggle, right? Inside anxiety. I should do this or not do this. Should I go this?
Okay.
Not.
So, procrastination or uncertainty might be an example of a war.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, let's just take that. That seems like a very safe example. Okay. Very safe. So part of you thinks you should do it, and part of you doesn't want to do it, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. At that moment, that's kind of a conflict, right?
Mhm.
Between those two forces. So let's just say that that's it. That's fairly simple. As I say, it's extremely safe. But what about, so normally it just proceeds mechanically. You just go, oh, yeah, I should do that. I really want to do that. But then you're on to the next thing. So how would you use that specific example and make the struggle of that sorcerer's profitable for your work?
I think it's the sensing, bring in the sensing that this is happening. I think that would be the start.
Okay. So then you notice that I want to do it and I don't want to do it. I want to do it, I don't want to do it, right? That kind of thing. So if you place your attention on that struggle, you can harvest that energy if you can get to presence and attention.
Yeah, it reminds me of that story then that I think elementary storybook about the monkey and the what was that? Something they two I think birds were fighting for a bread and the monkey, they were like, oh, this is not equal.
Two cat
And the,
story.
is it cat? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
and the
two
monkey
cats were
keeps
fighting.
eating,
Yeah.
and then it eats the whole bread without giving anything to the cats. So that's what happens. I think that's why we feel exhausted and drained out by evening.
Right.
Uh,
We're exhausted by evening, right?
yeah,
Are we exhausted by our the struggles that go on in us all day long and we just don't notice them?
right.
Probably,
Yeah, yes.
probably.
So, David, just to make sure that I understand, this is not about who wins in the war of darkness and light, right? It's not about whether I should go or I shouldn't go. It's about using the friction.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you an example, which I'm giving an example because I think everybody here should have an example that they are sharing with the group. I'll start it off. Now, if we turn to page 75, that third paragraph there, to blend these contradictions, it is only necessary to remove the buffer. Now, don't forget that there's a buffer between these constant contradictions, right? Does that make sense to you? Does that concept make sense to you? How can you have incredible contradictions and continue with your life?
One, the what comes to my mind is make yourself vulnerable, uh, open, confession, and show that contradiction, share that contradiction.
Show the contradiction, right?
Mhm.
Does that make sense to anybody else? Nikhil's nodding his head.
Yes.
Nishant's nodding his head. Swati's nodding her head. Who else is here? Bhavani is, these guys are nuts. Okay, so if there is a vibrant contradiction, the thing that holds it apart and allows us to live is what's called a buffer. Is this a common phrase to you? Have you heard this before, this concept?
Yes.
I know
Yes.
Bernie has. Yeah.
Yes.
So a
It's a,
buffer
pro-
is
it's a
go ahead.
protection. A
It's
protection. It's
it,
a strategy of survival brings, and so we can live in society, probably uh, make make our world, make
Right.
Without
the
going
world.
crazy.
Without what, Bhavani?
Without going crazy.
Without going crazy. It's like, let's say that
Uh-oh.
your
Too late.
boss, too late for Nikhil, but we'll say prayers for him. So let's just say you think your boss is a just total jerk, and you have kind of evidence that that's the case. But then when you go see your boss, you're all nice, supportive. That's a little bit of a contradiction, right? Can you see that? But
Yes.
it's kind of necessary. It's a necessary buffer in a sense, right? You got to keep your job, or you'd like to keep your job. But there's still this conflict. You recognize something and then you act in a different way. Between those two things is a buffer, which allows you to do it. So, as Bernie said, that may not be bad, you know? That might not be a bad thing. So, how do you harvest the energy between like or dislike an action? Bernie says, as you recognize it, right, Bernie?
Again, please.
Huh?
What? Can you repeat?
That the first thing you do is you recognize it.
Yes.
Okay.
Recognize.
So this paragraph that's highlighted, to blend these contradictions, it's only necessary to remove the buffers that have placed between them, which is accomplished by the gentle art of exposure to the light of confession.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think that means?
I have an example.
Excellent. Go for it.
So the most commonly used buffer in the world is nomenclature. Um, I'll just give some examples. Like, in the medical field, we don't exactly know why lot of diseases happen. Even common ones like blood pressure, diabetes,
Right.
they, but they came up with nice names, and they put this diagnosis that, oh, you have hypertension, you have diabetes mellitus type 2. A lot of and I think it's the same thing for the concepts.
Yeah.
Some of the definitions, they say, oh, this is how it is, this is the thing, this is the phenomena, this is what happens, but why it happens they don't know. Same thing with animals. A lot of kids feel that they know the animal just because they can identify the name. uh,
Right.
when nomenclature is a very commonly used buffer overall in all subjects. If you remove that, then your ignorance will be like glaringly obvious. If you ask the second question that, okay, this is the snake, but what exactly is this snake? You know the name, but what happens? What
Yeah,
anything after? So that is a big buffer that everybody carries.
I like that. I like that. Yeah.
Yes, good point.
So ignorance and its display within society is a remarkably difficult buffer, right? We don't want our fellow companions to think that we don't know we're stupid. But in fact, we are. I mean, there's a ton of stuff we don't know.
Even just nodding to something. Like I just noticed that when Nishant was talking about it, I was nodding to it, which felt like a buffer, like I could understand what he's saying or I knew what he was saying, but that itself is a buffer which I created just in the moment. So even just acknowledging, something, or like shaking your head to something of not knowing. Like both of them are a buffer in your mind, which makes you think either you know it or you don't. Which, why can't you be in the gray section? I mean, again, I just realized that while he was talking, I saw my own buffer. So,
Like, for instance, it would have been in society, it would have been tough for us to say to Nishant, I have no idea what you're talking about, because we want to think that we know, but in fact we don't.
We want to protect our vanity.
Vanity. When did we hear this one before?
I
Okay.
think last week.
Oh no, nobody here, by the way, Nikhil, none of these people have vanity. So
Oh no,
Not us. No,
not
no.
us.
not this group,
We are
okay?
we are superior.
All right, that's what I want to hear.
elevated
Ooh.
experience.
So so this chapter, what's the name of the book again, Nishant? I mean, Nikhil?
Practical work on self.
Practical work on self. Practical, right? Do you look at this chapter, when you read this chapter, do you see it as a invitation for some practical action on your behalf?
Hmm. Yes, there's a sense of confession to it where it says the act of confession uh, will help remove the buffer which is placed between the contradictions.
So
So,
so you see that as an invitation
mhm,
to work on yourself.
yes,
Ah, okay. So then your goal in this chapter is to find a section where the buffers are alive, right?
yeah. I have an example as well about that. Since we were discussing about this, I was thinking about uh, contradictions. There are so many to choose from. Uh, but when I came to Boulder last year, I found a place here where they do open mic every Wednesday, and I decided that I'll just go there every Wednesday so that I can get better at playing guitar in front of people,
Mm-hmm.
which I've not been used to for a long time. And I did go, but I found myself coming up with excuses every Wednesday at 5, like, oh, I need to do this, oh, I need to do that. Uh, because
Okay,
sometimes going
good.
there, going there and being in front of those people can be vulnerable and it can be daunting at times.
So this is a perfect example. This is a great example. So part of you has, let's just say, a positive goal of wanting to perform in front of others to help yourself learn how to perform publicly, right?
Yes.
That's like I think that's a good
Get
exercise.
comfortable in that discomfort
So I
is,
really want to do that. I want to learn how to develop this skill, this effort, etc. And then when the opportunity slowly comes to you, what do?
I cower away.
Oh, so you want to do it and then you don't do it.
Yeah.
Is this an example? Does everybody think this is an example?
What I realize is the point is not in doing or not doing. The point is in realizing that struggle. If we can find that friction which is happening right there,
If you
it
could
doesn't.
stick with that, Bhavani, if you could stick with that principle, that it's not about changing behavior
Hmm.
at all. And I'm going to read something from the 15th chamber of, the ABD. I don't know if you got, well, some of you guys are doing it often. This is the 15th chamber. It says, there is no reason to react, to simply acknowledge it as my own, and then thus be able to merge with the beloved. How cool is that, huh? No, go back to the other book. So it's in the 15th chamber, but just recognize it and don't react. If you can do that and stand between those two powers, Nikhil, don't change anything, but just notice them. You'll notice there's a power right there between them. My work goal is to do this, but I'm afraid of humiliating myself. What will they say? Right? That is a live contradiction of light and dark in you. My thing is that's stunningly valuable. Allow it and let it work. Watch yourself. And what you're going to find is right in the middle of it is this energy. Okay? Recognize the contradictions, blend the contradictions, and rise above them. So, right now you're giving us you're giving us a confession, right? Now it's a little dangerous to do that, Nikhil, to this group. Why
I
am I
think this is a
saying
safe place. I think this is a safe space.
we were going to meet right after this and talk about your problems, but
Uh-oh.
that's not the reason. What's the reason it is so powerful to confess? I'm not going to say to this group, but let's say to confess.
Because it's like I'm putting out there in the world. I'm letting the world know.
It's like you're screaming to the machine saying, I am not that. I'm noticing this mechanicalness of you because I can. And it's like you're declaring to the universe, I see that mechanicality. There's something quite beautiful about that, in my opinion. Okay? You get more power when you say it in front of a group. It's not necessary, but you do wind up with more power because of it. And if we go back up two paragraphs above it, the machine story is a revelation of these contradictions. By a true confession, we can effect their eventual reconciliation, which we can call the process of redemption. Bhavani, I'd like to ask you, are you okay with me saying something about your event that you talked about at the last class? Yeah, okay. So you had this situation where the doctor injured your child and you reacted, right?
It was my daughter.
Pardon?
It was my daughter, my elder daughter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was elder daughter who scratched my younger son. So
Oh, it wasn't a doctor. It wasn't that the doctor's
no, it was a daughter.
daughter. I'm sorry. And
Oh,
suddenly then you're crazy angry, right? Because actually at that moment that is crazy. That's insanity. It's a
mm.
little moment of insanity. And then you go, I'm not like that. Well, yes, you are, my dear.
I am. I just noticed how the machine reacted. So that was the beauty of it.
Exactly. That's the beauty of it. You harvest it. And now, in other parts of the literature, EJ will talk about not expressing negative emotions. He never talks about changing negative emotions, but noticing them. So if you had this, you notice this between your children, and then there's the anger, right? And you go, wow, that's pretty interesting. If you could just step back. But is there energy right then?
I noticed that every time you recognize the energy, you don't repeat it for a long time until you again go into ignorance. So,
That's right. That's right.
yeah.
Right. And psychologically, we can look at it, and part of you would doesn't we don't I don't want to go into psychology, but it's just because all I care about is the actual event, the fundamental now. So by true confession, which you did, you were brave enough to share that with the group. We can effect their eventual reconciliation. What in the world could that mean?
Could you repeat,
Bhavani, go ahead, huh?
could you repeat that?
What? Yeah, it says by a true confession, we can effect their eventual reconciliation, which we can call the process of redemption. Now I'm going to do something a little weird here, okay? So, Bhavani, explain this paragraph in relationship to Nikhil's comment.
What I understand would be that the machine has this thing. The mind wants to do something, and at the same time, the mind does not want to do it. So that is a part of the machine story. It's just naturally there, the contradiction. The thing is, the moment you realize, so the revelation, because you suddenly see it, that this is happening. And when you suddenly see these contradictions, and when you confess to yourself that that is happening to you, the
Mhm.
light and the dark is happening to you. And the moment you confess to yourself that, oh, I see that this is happening in me, that is when you suddenly, there is a certain balance which will happen because which is neither for or against. So when that happens, we can effect their eventual reconciliation. Reconciliation as in to bring back that balance of neither for or against. And that's when we can call the process of redemption.
So, do it, explain it in terms of the specifics that he went through. he wanted to go perform, and he knows it's good for him to do that. But then when it comes close to doing it, he chickens out.
Yeah.
So what would I don't get this. What would a reconciliation be?
Reconciliation is just noticing. Could it be just the observing?
So here would be an example of the reconciliation for him. And that would be, gosh, in order for me to achieve my goal, it's going to take a different kind of effort than I believed. Because as soon as I get close to it, I have the humiliation fear stops me. And so if he can play with his humiliation and make it okay. I am afraid of being humiliated. Okay, that's going to work in me. But if you put it close to your work goal of seeking this extra skill set, right, Nikhil? If you hold those together, they can kind of become friends, can't they?
Can you repeat, like, what do you mean by that?
It's like, so it's like, oh, I'm going to go do this kind of work now, and I'm going to feel humiliation or the fear of humiliation. That's just part of it. It's no different than driving to the place where the open mic is, or walking, or whatever it is with your guitar. It's just another element.
Mhm.
And you go, oh, I see. Yep, here I is. I'm going to go perform. I'm there. Oh my God, I still feel it. What are they going to make fun of me? But you proceed anyway. So you see the energy of humiliation, you harvest it for your performance.
And I loved what David mentioned, that he said to be okay with it. I think
Yeah.
that's the main point. To be okay with, or that you feel that you might get humiliated, to even be
Yeah.
okay with the thought of that. Which we don't want to be that vulnerable in front of others.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't want to ever be, I don't want to be humiliated ever. So,
and sorry, David, when you were talking about it, I realized one of the podcasts I was listening to, and one lady, she just said, so I don't know if it helps Nikhil in any way, but I loved the way she mentioned that one of her mentors or teachers, when she was doing something new and she never got ahead to doing it, the teacher had told her maybe the first step isn't small enough, which I felt very interesting.
very nice. Very
Because
nice.
the thing was that you feel, oh, it's not big enough, means I have to achieve something and I'm not able to take that first step. But the moment when she said it's not small enough, it made me suddenly think, what does that mean, not small enough? That meant that the smallest action that we can take towards noticing that humiliation, or the smallest, like say not driving all the way there, but just what is the small, for example, the example that she gave was that she wanted to write a book and she could not get into even starting the book because just the thought of it made her think, she was an author, a children's author. And then she told herself, oh, can I do at least one page? She could not do that, So then she got that teacher's thought and said, what is the smallest step that you could take towards that? Can I at least have thoughts of what I'm going to write and just put a word or two that I want to write about that page? Just one word. And that's it. Leave it at that. And so, what is the smallest step that you could take which will make you go closer towards that goal? So I mean, it's up to us, right, to think that what is, because what you're giving is maybe it's a huge step for you to drive there, to go there, to step up on the stage. What is the smallest step that you could take to notice that friction again? Even just thinking about it, it gives you that friction, which is the smallest step up there, which is giving you that friction. So
So if you can do that, it starts to you redeem yourself. You redeem your work energy, your work goal, when it's stopped by the mechanicality. Because if all you do is you live by the barrier of humiliation, you'll never get anywhere. But if you can harvest that energy and just say, I'm a guy that gets humiliated, but I'm going to go on anyway, you've redeemed your position in the work. Do you see what I mean? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even something like not just playing something, but even wearing like different socks to work or to school,
Mhm.
or wearing just like
Good.
like just having some funky hair and then going to school, so or something very
Well,
different.
Nikhil is not possible for him to have funky hair when he goes to school.
Noticed after I said that. You could try on a
Maybe,
wig.
maybe I'll surprise you, David.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
One thing I noticed that even when weeks that I built momentum and had really positive uh, open mics, there would still be fear the next week.
Sure. But that's just the way it's going to be. Remember what Bhavani said. It's not a matter of getting rid of the humiliation. Make friends with it. Okay? It's going to be, you're going to carry it with you. All right? That's okay. It's just there. And if you really flip it, why do you feel humiliation? Why in the world do you feel humiliation? You'll have to turn to Plato for the answer to that. Okay?
Mhm.
Plato talks about the ideal, right? And you can see the ideal, Nikhil, or you wouldn't even worry about it. You can see what it could be like. So
I'm
it's like
open.
the humiliation is not it's like a reminder for you, right?
I think it's a survival strategy for the
I,
machine.
I would say, David, that we have a model of what we should be as a
Yes.
man, as a woman, and we are not, of course, we are not, because we are humans, and the machine is striving continually to survive, and a lot of eyes staring at the act of said. You meet the boss, you meet your wolf, your son. So the contradiction is normal. I would like to share something that I was thinking. Maybe give some. In the early Greek um, history, when they truly believed in gods, they didn't have what we normally have, the guilt, because what has brought to us the apparent freedom has brought with it that freedom and responsibility.
Mm.
The Greeks believed that they were possessed by those gods, and their actions were not them. They good mechanism that allowed them to do a lot of things that would say we could say that very marginal. But by decided in their mechanical social system, so to say, that they were in those acts possessed by gods. We don't have that freedom.
Got it.
So I think the barriers, the buffers that EJ is talking, is a way to protect ourselves from those contradictions. Just feel very bad when we don't get to that model,
Yeah.
the model of we see in the films, or the woman that is very ready for the children, and we do the. We are a bunch of contradictions, and I think here the point is not changing that contradictions, but exerting some power out of that contradiction.
Right.
Because if not, we are talking of self-help. You have to do that thing. You have to do that thing. There is a lot of literature from the New Age and self-help. How to. I think this is something different.
Very
Sorry.
Okay. The whole self-help thing is you deserve to be you. Oh my God. So I didn't do an extensive study, but I did. Is the concept of confession in the Hindu literature at all?
I don't think so. Not that like I'm not someone who knows literature as much. So,
Me
but
either.
I think mostly we talk about karma and Maya, that
Correct.
everything is Maya. So whatever is an illusion. So
So when I read through the sutras and then the Gita, it's not discussed as a technique, the concept of confession, you
and
know.
what I realized was that the Vedas and Gitas, they are like after you've already at that point of confession, like
Yeah, you bet.
way higher there, like that's what I realized. It's not.
There you go. Thank you. That's very, very useful for me, Bhavani. Thank you.
I think all the schools, like that is something which is naturally taught in there. And then when you want to go a step higher, that's when you start the Gita and the Vedas.
Mm.
I don't know if it's for the ordinary people like us.
We're beginners, yeah. So in the Catholic Church, they talk about confession, and there's three principles. It's a disclosure of the sin. They call it a sin. Yeah, right. Repentance is, but so there's the first step of confession is actually, excuse me, remorse for the sin. That's the first thing. You notice it, and there's a sense of remorse. Not changing anything here. Then there's a disclosure of it. And then there's then there's an act of penance. So in the Catholic Church, penance is you say these certain prayers and things like that. But in our work, it's more like self-observation. You continue to observe it. Watch the thing work. Don't ignore it. And if you can get yourself to the position where you are watching it work, you are in very strong observation. And you're standing in the boat called I am not that. It's a beautiful place. And you're redeeming your soul from the mechanicality of the machine. So go back to the very end, last two paragraphs. To force conflicting ideas to reconcile. Don't do that. It's harder for me to read. Yeah. To force conflicting ideas to reconcile, we must be able to, if necessary, lie down and at the same time convince ourselves we are standing. These small conflicts are easy to manage or arrange. Later, to stage a real ballet, we must entangle these two powerful sorcerers in a genuine struggle for survival. The ballet must have a great conflict in order to attract and hold a struggle between these two forces. So, and Nikhil, you have the beginning of that. Okay. You can't see the whole power of what causes you to have humiliation. But it's big, buddy. It's a big deal. So you've caught a little thread, right? Follow the thread. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh, even the one on the page that we were, I think there are two paragraphs below it, where
Go back there.
he specifically mentions that
Go ahead and
ordinarily,
read
we
it.
know only 1/3 of the life story of the machine at any given moment, depending upon which fragmentary identity is active at that time, which is so immense.
Yeah.
1/3 of the fragmentary identity. So you are automatically there's one I, out of that, you only know 1/3 of that I at any given moment. So just think of how ignorant we are in a way, if we can sense that,
But then you have a giant sword. You have a beautiful sword of truth. And the sword is that I can observe it. Presence and attention in any event brings a huge prize. Does anybody have any other questions about this particular chapter before we move on?
I just joined back, so I'm not sure what to discuss. But one thing that and we were discussing this on Sunday. When you said when we see this, and I say that I'm not that. So what are we though? What are we if we are not this and that? Um, how do we find that space where we are?
So the answer to that, Nishant, is that I tag you for the next chapter.
Hmm.
but we still have plenty of time. We have 3 minutes. So who are you?
Yeah, I was talking to Jayesh on Saturday, and they're talking about, that gathering and on the uh, Labor Day weekend. And on Monday they are going to do the gold panning.
Oh, okay.
And it just occurred to me that all this, trash that comes up in our psyche, and eventually you just have to pan little bit of gold, like maybe uh, one small speck of gold out of that, out of all.
Nice. Nice analogy. Beautiful. Beautiful. And it's worth the effort, isn't it, Nishant?
Yeah, yes.
It's worth the effort, baby.
Because it's about the gathering, I just had curiosity if anyone from the group is joining for the gathering.
I'm planning to go. I just need to confirm my holidays.
I
Nikhil?
was I was
Jayesh
planning to
is
go
going.
as well, but I'm right now I'm just thinking of just staying where I'm at and not travel at all, given the situation of this country. So I'm not so sure if traveling this year is a good idea at all. I don't know.
That's reasonable. Swati, are you thinking of it?
I was up to now, but after what Nikhil said, my parents are on visitor visa, so I think I should give it a second thought to go or not to go.
Thanks, Nikhil. You just knocked her out of the biggest work opportunity she had.
Maybe I was the buffer.
She's a big girl. She can make her own decisions, buddy.
No. So in the meeting itself, there was a one girl from the Canada, and she was pointing that out about the situation. So at that time only it struck my mind, shall I? But if we leave to, they will take care. Like EJ will take care, of course. So I I trust that. So I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm struggling with whom to contact for that Portland part that my dad really wants to visit.
Oh,
So
right. Yeah.
I have to manage my itineraries and all that. So yeah.
Well, I'm worried about going to the gathering because, I'm Mexican and I could be deported at any minute.
You don't look Mexican, David.
They're looking at my records right now, Bhavani. Oh, God.
Careful not to comment anything on YouTube and Facebook.
Ooh. But once again, it's the marvelous wonder of being together and the electrical marriage of 30 or 40 people is quite nice.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Quite nice.
Yeah.
So,
I
and
want to do that every year. Like I did it once, and now I feel like I cannot miss that opportunity. It was
and
so
Nikhil, if you get arrested,
yeah.
I'll try to come and visit you, okay?
Oh, you will?
In prison. Yeah.
How awfully nice of you.
Oh, yeah. It's the least I could do.
No, you cannot do it. They don't let you in.
Oh my God, forget it.
It's the thought that counts, David. So I'll
That's
keep
right.
that in mind.
Yeah. Oh God. All right. So what are we doing next week, you guys? Is there another chapter in this book? Oh,
The search for
Nishant.
Dr. Livingstone. That's Nishant.
Okay. Yes.
See?
All right.
He's a doctor. This is about a doctor.
There you go.
Mhm.
All right. See you
Interesting.
guys. See you guys
Thank you.
next
Thank you,
Monday.
guys.
Lovely to see everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right.
Thank you.